So this guy called Leo from the channel Actualized.org made a video called Why Libertarianism is Nonsense. Well, I identify myself as a libertarian, and libertarian ethics has been one of the main subjects in my channel for the last years. And so I decided to answer his video. First of all, he talks in a very arrogant manner, calling libertarians many names like they're childish, they are deluded, they are selfish, they never thought about what they believe. Libertarians are in a lower level of spirituality, while Leo is at a higher level. He always talks about himself as someone who is at a higher spiritual level, talking down to those who are below. And he says that the things he's gonna say in the video are one of the deepest thoughts about libertarianism that you're ever going to find, that you'll not find any deeper or more sophisticated thought than his in the whole of YouTube. And his video is almost 4 hours long. So I actually watched almost all of it. I just skipped a few parts which were a bit repetitive. And as someone who's been a libertarian for 5 years, and I have seen lots and lots of arguments, I not only participate in forums and discussion groups, but I also have my own YouTube channel, and I post videos about libertarianism. I get lots of criticisms, and for someone who considers himself so superior and who has such a deeper thought than everyone else and such a higher level of spirituality than anyone else, I find his critiques to be some of the weakest critiques I've ever seen in all of those years I've been a libertarian. Those are really not anything special, as he says, but very naive critiques that hundreds of people have already said in the past. Nothing that he says in the video is actually new. And most important of all, he didn't understand the basics of libertarian ethics. He doesn't actually understand what libertarian ethics is. So he got the main principle of libertarianism completely wrong, because he says the main principle of libertarianism is freedom, and that is just not true. If you read any libertarian author, any of the most important libertarian authors, none of them consider freedom to be a principle that guides all of libertarian ethics. So these authors like Rothbard and Hans Hermann Hoppe, they don't consider liberty or freedom to be a main principle that guides everything else, but instead they consider property to be the main principle that guides ethics, not everything. So libertarians don't reduce everything to ethics, but in this whole video of almost 4 hours, Leo considers freedom to be the main libertarian principle, and thus misrepresenting libertarian ethics completely misses the point. So he doesn't even know what he's talking about to start with, not to mention that the quality of his arguments are very weak, are really weak. I've been seeing arguments criticizing libertarianism for years, literally hundreds or thousands of them, and I can say his arguments are some of the weakest I've seen in these years. So mainly what he says is that there cannot be absolute freedom, because absolute freedom would mean the absence of form, because everything is bound to its form. If you're a human being, you are limited by your form of a human being. If you're a bird, you're limited by the form of a bird. If you're a rock, you're limited by the form of a rock. So there cannot be freedom from that. And while I totally agree with this opinion, and by the way, I actually like some of the videos from Actualized.org channel, but the ones I like are about metaphysics and spirituality and not about ethics. I don't think he is qualified to talk about ethics or to talk about politics. And I don't think just because you understand some things about metaphysics or you understand some things about spirituality that this makes you automatically qualified to talk about anything else. And I think this is something we can observe in the case of Leo. Leo is good when he talks about spirituality or metaphysics. It doesn't mean that everything he says is true, but at least he has sophisticated thought, sophisticated reasoning, but it's not the same for ethics and politics. His thoughts about ethics and politics are actually very naive. He didn't read enough about the subject. He seems to have never read a libertarian book in his life. He doesn't even know what libertarian ethics is, that it's based on property, not on freedom. And okay, having said that, well, I myself don't believe in freedom. I don't believe in free will. I'm a determinist. So in philosophy, you have determinists versus libertarians, in the sense that libertarians believe in free will, while determinists don't believe in free will. In this case, I'm not a libertarian, I'm a determinist. A libertarian in the sense of free will is not the same as a libertarian in the sense of libertarian ethics, in the sense of private property. But Leo doesn't seem to know they are different, that he thinks they are the same. He thinks that a libertarian is someone who believes in freedom. That's not true. So he says freedom means also the freedom to do whatever you want, even violate private property, even violate the other person's rights. Yes, freedom means, by the meaning of the word, free will, do whatever you want, being able to do what you want to do, which, by the way, I don't believe it exists. I'm a determinist, but I'm not going to enter into this discussion right now. And yes, it's not possible that everyone could have freedom, absolute freedom at the same time, or it's not possible that you're free from the form of a human body, of a human brain. That's all true, but that has nothing to do with libertarianism, because libertarianism doesn't say you need to be absolutely free. Libertarianism only says that an equal rule or an equal law should apply to every individual equally. So whatever is the law, it must apply equally to every individual. And why do libertarians believe private property is this law? Because of a logical argument. And the argument is as follows. Every resource that a human uses in their actions is scarce. For example, I want to use this controller to turn on and off my television. But if someone else comes here and wants to take my controller and to turn on and off their television, if that person takes this controller, I'm no longer be able to use it. So it's scarce. Only one person can use it at a time. It can't be multiplied to everyone at the same time. So this microphone, if someone wants to steal my microphone and use it, I'm not going to be able to use it anymore. So that's why things are scarce. So that's why things have a price in the market. And if you want something, you need to give something in exchange. And the exception is the state. The state is a monopoly of force, and whatever it wants to do, it does by force, by forcing other people to do it. So people can have conflicts over scarce resources. Someone else may want to use my microphone. So the only way to avoid those conflicts, and avoiding conflict is the key here, is by determining who has the right to use each thing. For example, I have the right to use this microphone. Someone else may want to use it, but the right is mine. They will have to buy their own microphone. So this is called property. There is an owner, the person who has the right to use his or her property. And that's a logical argument by which you can come to the conclusion, by logical deduction, that private property must be the law that everyone could follow equally. There's no other way, because any other law that you propose is not going to be able to avoid conflicts over scarce resources. And that's why every other law is false. At least it can't be a basis. Private property can be a basis for other rules if the society creates those rules within the limits of private property and never by violating it. But the state, what it does is violate private property. And so Leo throws many arguments of why the state is necessary. And remember, the state is a monopoly of force. So if you talk about a state that doesn't have the monopoly of force, that's not actually a state. It's just a company that does whatever the state is doing nowadays. So private companies could do whatever the state does. There's nothing magical about the state. There's nothing magical about any service that requires monopoly of force in order for it to be done. Remember this phrase, there is nothing magical about any service that requires the monopoly of force for it to be done. And so Leo tells us many arguments of why the monopoly of force is needed, blah, 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 because without the monopoly of force, people would just use violence, and one company would destroy the other company. But all of that just ignores that the private market or the companies could offer whatever protection, whatever security service, that the state offers. There's nothing magical about the monopoly of force that requires it in order for something to be done. So everything can be done without the monopoly of force. You just have some kind of company, some kind of organization that does the same thing that the state does today, just without the monopoly of force. And you may ask, well, what prevents one company from taking advantage, from doing something fraudulent, from doing something aggressive, from using violence? Well, what would stop that from happening is competition. The exact competition that doesn't exist with the monopoly of force. Please note that competition is the opposite of monopoly. You either have monopoly or you have competition. So what happens if a company is fraudulent? Well, someone can find out, someone can spread that information on the internet, customers can stop buying from it, and security services can actually punish the company for doing that, because that's a crime, because that violates property. Remember that fraud is a violation of property. Violence against an innocent is violation of property. And so people can defend themselves against it. And people can also actually stop buying from whatever company is doing it and buy from the competitor. But on the other hand, what happens if the state is unjust? If the state is unjust, well, you can't do anything because it's a monopoly. You have no option. The state does something unjust. Everyone knows it does something unjust. And this is actually the case nowadays. But you can't do anything. The state is a monopoly. You don't have the option of stopping to participate. You are obligated to participate. So everything libertarians say is just that we should live with the market, with production, with civilization, with everything we have today. It doesn't mean destroy this and start all over like the communists believe. No, we keep everything that's working, which is the market, which is production, which is voluntary exchange, and you just end the monopolies. So everything that works continues to work just without the monopoly. This includes certificates, this includes checking if an airplane is going to fall, or if it's good quality, if it's secure, if things are safe, if services and products are safe, if no fraud is being committed, and what guarantees that this is going to work? What guarantees is competition. Competition in nature is what allows natural selection. So all of natural selection, all of evolution depends on competition. And monopoly is the opposite of competition. Please note this. Competition is not just a value on the market, it's a value for the whole evolution of the whole universe. The whole evolution of life depends on competition. If the universe were a monopoly, if we had a dictator god controlling everything, it wouldn't work. So the whole civilization evolved, the whole humanity, the whole civilization, and the whole planet and the whole biology evolved by competition. So monopoly is just something that is stopping more competition from happening. And another thing he says, and I'm going to answer this too, is that society is a complex organism that requires every part to work together. So you cannot just separate yourself from society. You need to be part of it. You need to work together with the rest of society. But that's not what libertarianism believes. We don't believe that you should separate yourself from the rest of society. Libertarianism does defend the mechanism of society as a whole. But this mechanism is the market. It's not the state. The state is a monopoly, while the market is something that creates this organized concatenation of all of the human actions in order to create the best production, the best value possible, and competition is always correcting the errors in this mechanism. Another example he gives is the human body. The human body has so many cells, and all of those cells work together. It's such a complex mechanism with trillions of parts all working together, all doing exactly what they need to do, for example, in order for me to be talking in this microphone right now. So he says this like an argument against individualism, that if you are an individual and want to do your own thing, so this whole mechanism is not going to work. But that's not how it works. In a libertarian society, you don't just do what you want. You have to do what the market values. You have to do what the customer values. So it's not true that in libertarianism you just do whatever you want, you're just free. No, you have to voluntarily exchange with other people. You have to offer some value to other people. You don't just do whatever you value. You have to do what other people value too. So the market is also a collective mechanism that creates order. And the human body doesn't have a state. There is no central organ in the body. You could say, oh, the brain is the central organ. The brain is not such a central organ because the neurons themselves, the neural network of the brain is decentralized. There is no control room in the brain. The neural network is decentralized. All the neurons work together to produce the results. They also compete. What do the neurons compete for? They compete for connections. Neurons want to connect with other neurons, and these connections are strong if the result of the neural network is efficient. And these connections become weaker if the neuron is not contributing to the result. So neurons compete for connections, and in the market, individuals also compete for connections in the market. They compete for value, to produce value that other people want, and that will make other people pay for it. So the neural network of the brain is actually very much like the market and nothing like the state. There is no control room, there is no central neurons telling every other neuron what it has to do. No one tells a neuron what it has to do, and yet the neural network does its own thing beautifully because of competition, because they are competing for more connections. Neurons want to create more connections, and in this way they create order. They don't even know they're doing this. It's the whole competition of the whole system, which is based on decentralization, that produces this beautiful result, even though none of the parts understand what they're doing. So the universe is a decentralized system of creation of order through competition, and this applies to every system in the universe, literally, that evolves. And things like the state or predators or parasites are just temporary forms in nature. Like the state is a social parasite, actually. It exists, parasites exist in nature, in biological nature, but they're just temporary. So the deep understanding that is lacking for Leo is the understanding that order comes from decentralization and not from centralization. That the whole order of the universe is decentralized. There is no dictator. There is no central authority creating the order. The order is created from the bottom up. The order is created from decentralization, from the really small parts that don't even know what they're doing, but because they are competing with each other, because forms are competing with each other for the propagation of their own form. So because of this, order is created from the bottom up and not from the top, not from an authority. And this has nothing to do with freedom. I don't actually believe in freedom. I'm a determinist. I don't even believe free will exists. Yet I'm a libertarian because of decentralization, because of private property, because of a rule that applies equally to everyone, which allows competition, which allows decentralization, which allows order, and not because of freedom at all. So I hope people watch this video and actually begin to understand what libertarianism really is. If Leo is really open-minded, that it's something he says he values a lot, I hope he watches this video and starts to understand what libertarianism really is and what decentralization really is, and the importance and fundamental importance of decentralization in the whole order of the universe. And by the way, decentralization will continue to be a very important and increasingly important value in the future, in the evolution of technology. So it may be something really worth thinking about. Thank you very much, and until the next video.